Thank you so much for joining us here today. So, we are hoping that you'll enjoy the next 30 minutes or so to think about how companies can get employees to ride to work, but also what you can do for the employers and organizations that get people to work. And I just want to start off by we're going to talk about what major U.S. employers, institutions, and employment districts are doing in the space today, how the micromobility world can better support the employer, and provide some specific examples on micromobility success stories, but also the challenges that come with that. And I'm Jessica Alba. I'm Director of Policy and TDM at Stanford Transportation, also partner at OmniMobility Solutions. And I am handing it over to Danielle to introduce herself quickly here.
Hey, everybody. My name is Danielle Glazier. I'm at LinkedIn. I run our global transportation program. I've been there for about 7 years, and we do a lot of different types of programming, from public transportation subsidies to loaner bike programs, a campus bike program, shuttles, and dynamic flexible solutions. And we're trying to solve a really big, complex problem. Urban planners call, the commute and transportation a wicked problem. And so I'm coming at my solutions from this perspective of what can I do to get the most people to not drive in? And I have to attack that from where they're coming from, what their capabilities are, what kind of access they have to the various resources that exist within the region, whether it's public transit or safe bike paths. So I do a lot of things, but my favorite thing is bikes. So I'm really excited to be here today to talk about what we do at LinkedIn.
Great. And then we have Andy. Andy.
Yeah, my name is Andy Townsend. So I'm with a small company called New Pedal. We help employers manage, grow, and sometimes even implement micromobility programs. Specifically mostly focused on bikes and scooters. And then I've been in bikes my whole life. Before that, I managed or ran a commuter repair bike shop in Seattle for the last 10 years.
Great. And Dan, all the way from Australia.
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everyone. I'm Dan Carr. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called Wombi. We operate here in the US in LA. We've just launched a couple of months ago, and we're in 3 cities in Australia. And we do full service flexible e-bike subscriptions. We're the largest cargo bike fleet globally currently, have over 2,000 active riders, and unique in the way that we, over 60% of our customers are female, and over 70% of our bikes are a household family configuration, and they're being used to replace a car or a second car. And probably the main reason I'm on stage today is we've actually been quite successful in partnering with institutions, whether that be municipalities or employers, in running behavior change programs to get people out of their cars and onto a different form of transport.
Yeah, great. And so how many here have heard the term TDM? Okay, so about half. And so transportation demand management is something that Danielle and I and a lot of employers are working on, and not just employers, but also regions, public agencies, etc., and districts as well. And it has to do with having programs and incentives that encourage people to walk, bike, and take transit for any trip, not just the commute trip, but rather throughout your day or around campus or between your home and your destination. And so that's something that we wanted to bring up today so that you're aware of that transportation demand management, or TDM, is something that we might be talking about here. And it's a good space for any shared micromobility provider to be aware of, because it's a big industry. It helps employees with productivity, and health, of course, sustainability, and employers with congestion and parking constraints. And so I want to start by first going to Danielle. What goes into creating a best-in-class employer transportation program?
So I said a second ago that this is solving for a wicked problem. But what I think the best way to answer that question is to really understand the business's main problems and what they're trying to solve for. And so I'll contextualize that for you guys and what LinkedIn has to deal with. And so we're in the Bay Area. We're also global, but most of my programs are down here in the Bay Area. We have an office in San Francisco, and then we have a big campus in the South Bay in Mountain View and Sunnyvale. And in Mountain View, we have trip cap requirements, and we also have to have a commuter program. We have to subsidize public transportation. So, that's one facet of what I'm trying to do. We also have very limited parking. And not only do I have, trip caps, but I've got, parking that I can't have everyone driving to the office. And then the other side of the thing is we're part of Microsoft, and Microsoft has a really robust carbon reduction goal. And so sustainability is a huge piece of my program as well. And so when I'm thinking about, best-in-class employer programs, I'm looking at all the things that I need to do. So, we have 1,000+ employees that live within 3 miles of our campus. So those people are like my prime target to try and get to bike or walk to the office. And so what kinds of programs can we have available to them? But then we also have a lot of employees that live along the public transit lines, Caltrain, or they live in Oakland or Oakland or San Francisco, and they could take BART. And what are the first mile, last mile solutions that I can provide them, whether it's with a bike or a scooter or something like that? So these are the problems I'm trying to solve for. And then I'm looking at, what I can provide within the budget, within the culture of the company. And I'm really lucky to work for a company that gets it. So we have a big campus, and we have a campus bike program. We have 165 bikes. They're pedal bikes. We have 3 mechanics and rebalancers on site, 1 shop lead, a program coordinator, and a program manager. So we've got 6 people who are really helping do this. And since I've got these people on site and they're the bike experts, I'm thinking, well, what can we do to help the commuters who are coming to our office? So they're helping design our end of trip facilities. We have a loaner bike program where we have 15 bicycles, 5 e-bikes, 5 road bikes, 5 hybrid, and the employee can check it out through this team, get all fitted out with what they need, ride the bike for 2 weeks, see if they want to actually make the investment before they actually do purchase something, and then the team will advise them on how to do things. So it's really, I just said a lot though, and that takes a long time. I've been doing this for 7 years at LinkedIn. So I think it's figuring out what problem you need to solve and then finding these little opportunities to leverage the resources that you have.
Yeah. And talk a little bit about the internal struggles or opportunities working across different departments. What does, for instance, environmental health and safety say about e-bike and, for instance, e-scooter and batteries in buildings? And how's that conversation going right now?
Yeah, that one's coming up. We haven't gotten into it just yet, but I have a little bit more information from the last panel, so that's great. But they are looking at these kinds of things. But one thing we are actively talking about right now is we want to do employee bike repairs. And in order for me to do something like this, again, I'm leveraging an existing team on site that has a workshop, that has the skills and the abilities to do the repairs. But I have to go to privacy because we're going to be dealing with the employee's information. I have to go to legal. What responsibility does the company have for repairing a bike, and how does that impact what we can do or not. They need a waiver? And we're also doing this through a third-party company, so it's not even through LinkedIn. Environmental health and safety has to check off on it. Benefits and employment tax has to review it for compliance and give us guidance. And then I have to, go through my own leadership team to get approval. And lastly, whenever we do anything with technology, I have to go through house security review. And I don't know if any of you have had to do that yet, but it is like a 6 to 9 month long process where you're like, are you SOC 2 compliant? And do you have GDPR protections in place? So it's really complex to lift up a program, and that's why it takes so long. And so you really want to have good partners, and that's what I'm looking for, is like somebody who will go with the flow with me and understand, like, we're eager, but we've got to work through all this bureaucracy, and like, if you could just ride with me on that, everything will work out eventually.
Yeah, I do have one follow-up question. So not every district has its LinkedIn or Microsoft or Google, like the bigger employers who all have really solid bike programs. And can you say anything about transportation management associations, just from a general perspective, that it's an organization that covers multiple property owners, companies, etc. And so I know in Mountain View, are you part of a TMA?
Yeah, so I sit on the board of the Mountain View Transportation Management Association, and we actually don't get, there's a shuttle service that goes from the train to major employment centers and then to residential areas. We are not on those train routes, those bus routes, but we're still very active because they're looking at different ways to support the Mountain View community in getting around, and not just employers. So that's something that I really like about my job, is that, yeah, I'm focused a lot on the employees, but when you're part of a TMA, you're really looking at like the broader scale, and taking my expertise and giving it to a city that is really trying to do some really innovative things and supporting them through that and promoting the things that they're doing. So for smaller companies or other like residential, there's a lot of still really great low-hanging fruit things you can do. And it's really thinking about the rider's experience getting in and out of that building. I think if you can make that better, that will be huge. So if you've ever gone through a front door with a bicycle and had to hold open these like giant doors, it's really difficult, or lug your bike up these stairs, or ride a bicycle down into a parking garage. That's scary. And there's real easy things you can do: paint, mirrors, cages with locks, and maybe an ADA door button or something. So there's a lot of little things that I think you can do that will make it easier.
Yeah. So the one of the takeaways here is that it's not necessary to just work directly with employers, but also look for the transportation management associations and the transportation management organizations, or active regions, regional metropolitan agencies, etc. So dig those out if you're looking for partnerships. Andy, having worked with a number of employers throughout your career, what goes into New Pedal's checklist when vetting vehicle and supply partners, etc.?
Well, that's an excellent question, Jessica. Thank you. I don't know if anybody caught it, but 2 panels ago, we could just bring Josh Hahn back up here, and he could basically reiterate a lot of what he said. But for what we were looking for when we're bringing new vehicle partners and suppliers on with New Pedal is essentially reliability and repairability. So once Danielle has done all that work and they've got someone over the hump and they're starting to commute to work on a daily basis, you want it to be a positive experience for them. You don't want them to have a bike that's breaking down. And I can tell you, once you do get someone commuting on a regular basis, the last thing that they will ever stop to do is preventable maintenance. People have nice road bikes, they have nice mountain bikes. They'll take them in and get tuned up all the time, keep them in tip-top shape. But trying to get someone excited to do preventative maintenance on their commuter bike is like trying to get someone excited about doing their taxes. It's just never going to happen. They're going to always find a way to put it off. And the problem is when it becomes their daily vehicle and it breaks, they need it repaired quickly because it now has become their daily ride. So that's a really important part of what we look at. What we look at when we bring on partners, and what that basically means is if something breaks down, we're looking for brands that have done their homework and they know how to fit into the existing industry right now, and you can take your bike into any bike shop because that's the industry right now. If you're fortunate enough to have one on campus, that's great too, but the infrastructure is all the same. They all get parts from the same distributors. They all come from the same places. So if someone has to wait 2 weeks because they have a proprietary 5-inch wide tire or something like that, 2, 3, 4 weeks, I mean, their vehicle is essentially, it's completely taken out of that habit, and you've completely undone all of that work. So that is one half of it. The other half of it is just because you have parts doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the bike shops want to work on them either. And that's a really important factor. Just because you can say, hey, you can get parts. Well, if you've got an 80-pound whatever, the average bike mechanic can't lift and put that up on their stand. There are electric stands, all kinds of stuff like that. But these are really important things. You can have parts, but if there's this hurdle that bike shops just don't want to work on it, which is a big thing in the country right now. I mean, there are shops that just have blacklists of bikes that they won't work on. And it's not because they're dicks. It's just because it's a really long time to work on it, and it's more effort than it takes to fix it. And these are all little things, but I can tell you firsthand from watching it and working on those bikes myself, and talking to shops and talking with brands and talking with dealers. These are very important factors that really make or break the difference. Like Danielle does all the work to get people on this program and running, and if they're on a bike with a bad experience, it completely negates all of that work.
Can you talk a little bit about New Pedal's like business model? What sets your company apart from others?
Yeah, sure. Well, unfortunately, my partner Ben couldn't be here today, but Ben also has a long history in the bike industry, so we both have heavy bike backgrounds. Ben was partner that started Benno Bikes, so very similar sort of to Turn Bikes and in that vein of things. So I would say we both have a high bar, and we have pretty high standards of who we want to work with. We always want to bring more people on. We want to bring and educate more people to get up to the same level as the rest of the industry. But I would say we might be a little selective.
But I also appreciate that it's truly about tailoring to the location and to the circumstances on the ground where you are. And so partnering with local bike shops, or working within a team that already has a bike shop set up, and figuring out what's going to work well and not. So on to Dan. When you guys designed Wombi and brought it to LA, what was your thought process, and what have you learned on your journey?
Thanks, Jessica. So it's about a 4-year journey now. The first 3 years of those were really focused on the Australian market, and I think how that's brought us to the US and LA in particular has just been that we've seen enormous potential, I guess, it's the transformative nature of a small format cargo bike to really hold it up to the trips that people use their cars for, and really take on and displace those trips. And that's generally disruptive to the transportation mix. And we also think it's quite universal. It's not something that was unique to one city in Australia or one suburb in Australia. It's working in 3 cities in very different places in Australia with very different maturities of cycling infrastructure. And so when we looked at that, we think, well, LA actually looks a lot like Sydney in terms of its maturity, in terms of cycling adoption, the transportation problems it has, and the types of people who are, I guess, driving the forces that are driving this whole industry, and that, there is broad scale awareness and adoption, that people want to change. And so with really cool solutions, like whether it be the bike itself or the subscription that we offer, or employers who are taking a step to incentivize it, that's all coming together nicely. And so for us, LA, particularly West LA, where we've started, medium density, lots of transportation issues that can be addressed by small format vehicles.
Yeah. What's the most popular bike that you guys offer?
Well, we've been pretty selective. So we deliberately chose to work with Turn and offer 3 of their bikes. We started with only offering 2, and we offer 3 now. In LA at the moment, with the first 100 or so customers, it's our the Turn GSD, which can carry up to 2 passengers or a load of shopping and things like that. And I think the observation, I guess, that's good for this panel or this audience is that people do want to try something new. You can incentivize it, and whether it's incentivizing it for a 2-week trial, whether it's incentivizing it by building better facilities, whether it's incentivizing it by paying for it ongoing to offset a car space, in all of these little incentive programs do actually work. The thing that we're all up against, though, is, I guess, despite what most of us here who have, work in the vehicle space would like, people don't actually want an extra vehicle in their household. And we've learned that pretty comprehensively over 4 years. Is a lot of the decision making is I need to replace a vehicle, not add a vehicle to my life. And so you need to, if you're thinking about how I think about a customer, it's the same as how an employer would think about an employee. Is if you want to stop them driving a car to work, you need to address all of the trips that car's doing, or a very good majority of them, not just the commute. And so we find, say, behavior change programs we've run, is we really focus on if we can get those top 4 trips that people are doing. And so that's the commute. Actually, the McKinsey guys had it on a slide before. In fact, the commute was like number 3, I think, out of the trips that people wanted to use mini or micromobility for. So it's like shopping. For me, it's basketball on Saturday mornings and guitar lessons on Friday afternoons with the kids. If I can't replace all of those trips, I'm less likely to just have a single thing that I use to get for one trip. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the best learnings we've had over the time.
So, of course, being able to carry your kids to and from daycare, or as part of your commute, how do we make concerned riders feel comfortable? And maybe this is a question we can start with you, Dan. Is it working in LA? I know you've only started in LA, but in Australia as well. Are we getting there? Are people starting to feel safer? And
yes, I mean, this topic is one that we all have to hold very delicately in our hand, because we want to incentivize the take up, which then is the flywheel that's driving for the change. I think what I've been pleasantly surprised by through this journey in the business is that if you can coach someone, it's a little bit like my personal cycling journey, is that I had somebody in my mid-30s who kind of coached me on how to get around my city and get to those places and go through that behavior change process. And then I coached my partner, and now I coach thousands of people as part of our business. So it's like employers can play a really big role in that, as can, brands, vehicle suppliers. But the cool thing is like you can get the gold standard infrastructure, and when that is getting developed, and then you get a mix of nice low residential speed limits and a community, of people who are happy to coach each other and build on. And I think that's the really interesting thing about where we work with both municipalities and schools and employers is it is a real, and it's actually one of our values as a company, is that it's the communities that are driving the take up. So making the product visible in the community, I think it's working.
Yeah. Yeah, Danielle, I know that LinkedIn and some of the other bigger tech employers have had to really invest in safer infrastructure as well. Should that be the role of an employer?
That's a really loaded question. I think a partnership with the city or where you're operating is really important. So I'm proud of the work that we've done. We have installed bike lanes along our campus, one voluntarily, some tied to development requirements. But I wanted to tap in on some of the things of like addressing concerned riders. That's a huge thing, is the infrastructure and making sure it's connected. But I'm going to point out to Jessica in the black shirt over there. She is our bike program manager and runs an amazing team of people on our campus that will do route planning for the employees. And our team knows the ins and outs of the Bay Area, and they are talking to employees all the time. And so they're able to put something into Google Maps or whatever and say, this is the best route for you to get to the office. This is the safest one. This is the most direct one. This is the one that has bike infrastructure. And so that takes away a barrier for the employee. But we also do educational classes. And this fall, we had a learn to pedal class. And there are a lot of people who do not know how to ride a bike and they don't feel comfortable. And even though we have these campus bikes, they're not going to get on a bicycle and potentially fall in front of their like colleague or their boss. That's just like the most embarrassing thing ever. And the team trained 4 people who had no idea how to do anything and were able to pedal and turn and stop within the end of the training. And that's 4 people that will never lose that skill. That's a transferable skill that they can take throughout their lives. And I think it's really important that we do those classes. We also do urban cycling, riding at night, what kind of gear you should have when it's winter. We have a really robust newsletter that goes out every month with different links to articles. And so there's just so much education that you can do for the concerned rider. And I think too, the loaner bike program, just like, okay, so maybe they're concerned but they're interested. And now all these barriers, I'm basically just trying to remove barriers. They have someone that they can comfortably talk to that's not selling them a product, that's on their side, that's letting them test something out and giving them advice.
Absolutely. Anne, did you have anything to add on that in the different communities where you guys have worked?
I mean, they both nailed it. I mean, that's really it. I mean, and I can tell you from over a decade of working with commuters that it's a standard process that, just like Dan said, there's a friend that gets them into it. It's either friendly or abusive peer pressure that gets someone finally to start riding. They'll usually ride for a summer and they'll put the bike away. Usually, if it's not their bike, a borrowed bike at the fall, and they'll sometimes pick it up again the next year. But it always starts with, I need to know how to get there. I need to know how to be safe. And then, like Danielle said earlier, it comes down to having facilities when you get to work. And once you remove, like Danielle said, those barriers, then it's just building habit and first having a bike that doesn't break down on them. It's all good from there.
Yeah, I just there's roughly 60% of our Bay Area population or any metro region here in the US that would love to bike or use a micromobility device and just doesn't feel safe. And so what we can do as a community in this big hall is to just keep on educating and transferring that knowledge that we need better infrastructure, first of all. And then we can use various strategies and tools to get more people to feel comfortable riding in the current environment and using residential streets or trail like Bay Trail or other trails, even if it might be a little bit longer, and takes us a long way. Okay, so we have about 5 more minutes. I would love for each of you to wrap up with any final thoughts that you might have. And let's start with Dan from the bike subscription business perspective.
Well, I was thinking earlier, I think the interesting thing about our business model, we get paid monthly. We get paid monthly as people continue to use our product. So we're kind of like, we've become a behavior change program in itself, or a behavior change supplier, because we need to create cyclists. And I think just encouraging, both the vehicle suppliers and brands that are here, as well as employers, is that you can take on that role. It is very rewarding work to create somebody as a cyclist, and then they create cyclists. So I've happened to build a business model that works around it, but it's great to work with other people and to work with institutions who are, I guess, driving exactly that same thing. So just get started with it, basically.
Yeah. Andy?
I think one important piece for this audience here at this event would just be for people that are getting into this space, people that are creating new vehicles or looking into that space. Do your homework, get involved in the industry, understand the integration that already exists, understand the part suppliers, understand why, and use standard parts as much as you can instead of doing proprietary stuff. It's always fun and cool to have something unique, but it makes it really, really challenging for everybody else to service it. So I would just say, take that time. If you don't already have that in your planning, put it in your planning, and it will make your brand or your vehicle infinitely more successful in the long run.
Great. And Danielle?
So this is the first time I've been at this conference, and I was really trying to think of the audience that's here. So I wanted to kind of end with what I think would be most helpful for you to know when you're looking to partner with an employer, what, we're really needing in a partnership. So it could vary based on the size and scale of the company. Definitely, I'm a larger employer, but I'm looking for a turnkey solution that is going to have a solution for the beginning to the end of experience. So, if it's a rental or loaner type program, you can educate and you have really good information on your website about the product. You can train my staff or somebody so that they can speak about it, and you're an industry expert, so I'm not getting a product that is not going to be safe, that's going to have battery issues or charging issues or fall apart, or the employee is going to have a bad time getting a repair. So I want that, and I want your guidance and your support throughout the entire time that we have a relationship, and I want the experience with that the employee has to have a clean, easy to use interface and support system, and that goes down to the maintenance and repairs, whether it's through my team that does it, or you identify people that we can partner with. I'm relying on people who are experts to come in and provide this amazing solution for me. The other thing that I think is really key is options. So we've touched on it a little bit, there are different types of riders, families, people who are into the Lycra and going over the Santa Cruz Mountains, on their road bike, people who are into mountain biking. And the way that I think you really create behavior change is by supporting all the different ways that someone wants to use a bicycle or a scooter. And if I can only offer one bike model, then that just not interesting to me, because that's only going to work for a very small set of people. So those are just some of the things that I look for.
Yeah, I truly appreciate it. All of your thoughts and how there's so much we can do. And we have so much opportunity knowing that there are so many people who want to use micromobility devices, and just maximizing the programs is the way to go. So thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica. Thanks, everyone.